Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is JGOD. In today's video, we're going to focus on the top 5 reasons you are not as accurate as you should be in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. And if you're not accurate in a first-person shooter, more than likely you're not going to be winning all those engagements. So throughout the video, we're going to focus on these target areas that I think can help you improve as a player. But in addition to that, I'm going to be throwing you some bonus tips throughout the video as well. So the starting point that we'll attack today is people that use the wrong sensitivity. I think more often than not, people get caught up in using another person's sensitivity, which is the exact opposite of what you actually want to do. And I throw that out there because more often than not, people ask what my personal sensitivity is. And on each of the videos that I broke down the Korean Savage gameplay, Swag's gameplay, and Dismo's gameplay, there were plenty of comments asking what their individual sensitivities are. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what anyone's sensitivity is but your own, because you're going to be the one that has to actually use that sensitivity and no one else. So the personal tip that I recommend to find this right sensitivity, I've done other videos kind of breaking down this particular aspect, but all you got to do is jump into a custom game with a bunch of recruit bots and free-for-all using a class setup that has laser sight. So in the gameplay that you're watching, I'm using that belt feed operator mod on the CoD with that laser sight, and all I'm focusing on is those hipfire kills. And this is very similar to a drill I'll talk about towards the end of the video, but what you really want to do is try to see how accurate you can be. So your overall focus should be how comfortable you are at snapping onto targets without the ability to aim down sight. This is going to be incredibly important when we get to a few of the other tips we're going to talk about in this video, because being able to adjust those crosshairs when they're not aimed down sight is very significant in winning gunfights. At the making of this video, I'm also not sponsored by Control Freaks, but that's something I highly recommend. You're just trying to improve that accuracy. Typically what it does is it allows you to up that sensitivity. So in case you're on the lower end of your sensitivity, you can actually bump it up a little bit higher. So whereas maybe I'd normally play with a 4.4, with Control Freaks, maybe I could bump it up to a 5.5 or a 6.6. And I'll be able to make that change without worsening my accuracy. So if you're struggling to find that right starting sensitivity, I would definitely try out this drill. And you can start with a little bit of a higher sense and then work your way down to that perfect sense, or start on the lower end and work your way up until you stop being accurate. And once you stop being accurate, then you know, okay, I gotta drop it down one, and that's going to be my sensitivity. So now that you've found your sensitivity, let's kind of work through the issues that I think a lot of people don't really understand about this game, and that is the concept of predictive recoil. Plenty of other games have already had predictive recoil for a while, but Black Ops 4 is the first time Call of Duty has ever actually played with this concept. And the best part about predictive recoil is it does the exact same recoil pattern every single time. So to show you a few examples of that, what I've done is set up the Spitfire SMG with that Wildfire operator mod. And for its recoil pattern, you can see it kind of makes this backward C, so no matter how many times I line up the shot in the right spot, just hold that trigger down, it continues to make this backward C. And I step back just a little bit further and I try it out with a cordite, and you'll see it kind of does this little S pattern. Starts on the bottom, kind of loops to the left, and then loops back up. It'll continue this pattern because that's how predictive recoil works. So now that we know what predictive recoil is, we can actually focus on countering predictive recoil, and there's two ways to do this. The first one we'll focus on is adjusting for recoil, or some would call recoil management. So to make this as simple as possible, what I'm going to do is trace a red line over that cordite recoil pattern. And as you can see, on the left is a little bit of a zoomed in version of that, and the right is what you should be doing to adjust for that recoil. And at first glance, you're probably wondering, how the heck am I going to adjust for that? But obviously that's where practice comes into play. So as long as you know that recoil pattern and are adjusting for that on a regular basis, you're just going to get better at adjusting for that recoil. But another tip that I think will help a ton is continuous burst firing. And even though I feel like this tip is more effective, not a lot of people do it, let alone even know about it. So this is just me correcting for recoil without actually doing that burst fire technique. And for the most part, you can see that I managed that recoil fairly well, and that doesn't even account for the sticky aim, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So you can see those three examples of me just controlling the recoil. Now I'm controlling the recoil while also trying to burst fire. Obviously at this distance it doesn't look like a huge difference, but obviously the further you get away, it'll be more noticeable. And the goal of this technique is to trick the game into repeating that loop of that predictive recoil. So adjusting for the recoil can be significantly easier. And the other big mistake I think a lot of people run into is they don't really understand how target assist works. And more often than not, we refer to this as aim assist, even though aim assist is a completely different mechanic than target assist. And in this game, when you have target assist on, there's actually two different types of target assist. The first part is that aim down sight target slowdown, and the second part is the rotational target assist. So what you're going to see right here is what it looks like without any target assist. And just a heads up in case anyone is unsure what the heck aim assist is, it basically only works in zombies and in multiplayer in previous games, and that's basically where you aim down sight and it'll auto lock onto the target. So what you're watching right here is me strafing back and forth while aiming down sight, and then I'm going to creep a little bit closer, and then I'm just going to strafe back and forth while not aiming down sight. You'll see that my character isn't adjusted in any way. It just keeps looking the same exact direction without any movement. So I go back to the settings and then I turn that target assist back on, and you'll see how my character behaves completely different. Now when I go ahead and strafe back and forward, look at how sharply it turns. I'm not touching that right analog stick. It's actually moving the character and making sure that it looks that way. See, as I strafe, it kind of rotates my body so I can look directly at that player. There's a little bit of slowdown so that when I'm aiming down sight, and then obviously the rotational is while I'm moving. So as long as you're moving, you're going to get that rotational aim assist, and it carries for quite a distance. And I went a little bit more in detail of how effective strafing is in my How to Strafe Like a Pro video, but the gist of the video is you should be strafing in every single fight. Even if it's just moving your character a little bit back while you're in a gunfight or forward while in a gunfight, at the end of the day, you want some kind of movement with the left analog while you're locked onto a target so that you can maximize that sticky aim. And that's obviously in addition to making yourself a harder target to hit. We've already went ahead and checked off 3 different mistakes people are making when it comes to being accurate. But this next tip's going to be an absolute game changer. So let's go ahead and think about it. Now we have the right sensitivity. Now we understand how the predictive recoil works, that there's actually ways to counter that predictive recoil, and then there's also ways to trick the system with burst firing. So if we combine all that with sticky aim, we can be incredibly accurate, but there's still going to be a piece missing to the puzzle, and this is actually probably one of the most important aspects of accuracy, and it comes down to centering. And to be honest, this is probably one of the main reasons I think a lot of people struggle with sniping. And I don't consider myself a good sniper by any means. I haven't really invested enough time to get really good at sniping, but at the end of the day, the concept's there. If you center your shot before you aim down sight, you'll have the target lined up and you can pull that trigger with minimal delay between aiming down sight and taking that shot. And I think pretty much anyone that snipes has a basic concept that when they aim down sight, they need to be on that target, but a lot of times those skills don't translate to other weapons. And this is a little bit more advanced technique, but it's very simple to execute, and the key is to be centering on areas you predict enemies will be. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple examples. So in this first example, you're going to see a mistake of centering. You're going to see how I end up dying as a result. So I'll do a freeze frame just to show you how drastic the difference of where I should be centered, which is the green, and the red is where I'm actually looking. And you'll see how I have to make that adjustment at the last second to snap on the target. And that little bit of delay will cost you more gunfights than you actually realize. Once you make this slight tweak to how you move around the map, you'll find yourself winning more gunfights, and many of which you won't even take damage for. And here's a little bit better execution. You can see my crosshairs were on this doorway the entire time. And that's what you need to do when you move around the map. I'm going to show you one more bad example, followed with a good example, and then we'll go ahead and get into the final tip. So I'm going to show these back to back. Just pay attention to how low my crosshairs are, and I have to make that adjustment. By the time I make the adjustment, I'm getting absolutely melted. The guy's already pre-aiming, ready to take me out. But this time around, I go ahead and pop out, snap onto exactly where the guy is, and I end up killing him before he even has a chance to react. And personally, I think centering is probably one of the hardest things to do for people because you have to break a bad habit. But if you make a mental note of focusing on centering on a regular basis, I can guarantee you'll win more gunfights. And the last tip has everything to do with making sure you're in the right state of mind. And a lot of times people don't have any clue about how much this actually affects you. So if you're the type where you just get mad, angry at the game, you start raging, I can guarantee you your accuracy will suffer. And I know I've personally experienced this myself. Sometimes I'll get frustrated with the game. Maybe you're going for a specific challenge, and over time your shot just gets worse and worse and worse. And when you come back to the game the next day, your shot's perfectly on point. You're having a good time. You're able to land every single shot. You're solid. So a lot of times that is a huge factor. If you're not in the right state of mind, you're definitely going to miss more shots. So if you're getting to that point where your mood's going to be affected, definitely go ahead and make sure you take that break so you can have that right state of mind. And the bonus tip that I have for you is to make sure that you're practicing these different elements on a regular basis to kind of measure where you're at skill wise. And to practice, all you need to do is jump into a private match like I explained with the cordite, but you do this with whatever weapon. You make sure you hit your shots and see how many bots you can kill within one magazine or one clip of the weapon. So I know I had a lot of information in this video, but if you can do me a quick favor, go down to the comment section, let me know what was your favorite tip from the video, and that's pretty much going to be the tip that you think will contribute to you being more accurate than you've ever been in Call of Duty. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful in some way. If you did, please remember to hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you're still watching at this point, it says on YouTube that only about 85% of the people that watch my videos are subscribed to the channel. So if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, go ahead and hit it. You're already watching the content, you're enjoying it. If you watch to this point, definitely appreciate it. Put those notifications on so you don't miss out on my future content. Do appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.